Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand, a podcast for leading financial professionals, or rainmakers, and their teams that offer support for securing a successful future. From marketing help to staffing structure, listen and subscribe for actionable insights from advisors and skilled professionals alike.
Hello and welcome everyone to this week's coffee break. Looking forward to an engaging discussion this week on the topic of philanthropic marketing, showcasing your firm through outreach. As Gina shared in the opening, please, if you have questions, comments, want to share what you're doing, either personally or at your firm, please put those in the chat. We would love to hear about those. Plus, you never know what kind of ideas are going to be generated that someone else might want to run with themselves or at their firm. Because we know there's plenty of opportunities for you as advisors to be charitable, and it has benefits that go far beyond helping the cause you care about. So today we want to discuss how to market those charitable actions with tact and care so that it doesn't come across as self-serving. So this week we have three fantastic guest baristas with us. Darrin McComas, owner and lead advisor of Evergreen Wealth Advisors, our own Chelsea Konst, the content marketing manager here at C2P, and Nikki Glynn, returning director of marketing at JL Smith. Thank you all for being here today.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Darrin, let's get started with you. Why is engaging in charitable outreach important to you on a personal level, as well as sharing that information with your wealth management audience?
Yeah, those are two great questions. I think for me, I'm a big person of faith, and we're taught, and it's natural that we want to give back to the community, whether that's our time, our money, or our talents. And I just look around our community. There's so many people that are desperately needing help and so many great causes out there to engage with. Sometimes it's a matter of just finding those right events or those right organizations to partner with and help out whatever we can do, whether that's, again, money or just donating our time and efforts to that cause. And yeah, I just think we are in that as advisors, we're just naturally serving our clients. So it makes sense to also serve our community.
To tie those two together. So I guess, Chelsea, build on that. How can advisors tastefully highlight those charitable activities in their marketing material and use it to enhance their appeal? Because like we said in the opening, like you want to toe that line very carefully of not coming off as self-serving. So how can and should we be using that in our collateral?
Yeah, I'll start with should, just because, again, following up with what Darrin said, there's so many different causes out there. And I think when you think about what clients are looking for and how that aligns with how you want to present yourself as their wealth manager, but also their partner, they're looking for someone who is honest and trustworthy, but also cares not as much about themselves, but about other things, about the client themselves, and also what the client cares about. It's having something that you are tied to when it comes to like a charitable organization that shows that you are dedicated to help. And then it also just promotes goodwill and it connects you to the people that you are going to be serving as well. But so how to do it tastefully, I think making sure, and I stole this from the Story brand, like you are not the hero in these situations. The charity is the hero, and also the client or prospect that could be helping donate to these causes that you champion. They're the heroes in this situation. So making sure that you're not like bringing it back to yourself. And then also always making sure that whenever you're talking about the good things that you're doing in the community, giving the out for them to actually go and connect with these organizations. Because at the end of the day, like, it is important that you are part of that, but you want to make sure that you're putting the focus on what these organizations are doing. You're just an important part of that.
Thank you. And thank you for plugging Story Brand. I know it's one of our favorite books, and I highly recommend if you have not read that one. And if you have read it, it talks about being, like Chelsea said, be the Yoda, not the Luke Skywalker. Be the guide that helps them and makes them the hero with that. And I know we were talking as a group in the opening too about the importance of that message you shared, Chelsea, because we've covered this in previous coffee breaks where people want to work with people, and especially advisors, with how important you are to their future, their family's future, that they know and trust. And so when they can see those charitable activities and groups that you're involved in, the faith-based ones like Darrin's talking about, or personal preference groups, it immediately establishes that rapport and connection with them before you're even engaged in anything further on the financial side. Nikki, I'll turn to you next because I know you're very involved with this and have been for a long time for us here at JL Smith and previously Petros. What are some of the benefits both from an advisor's firm and the advisor themselves that you've seen as a result of philanthropic marketing?
I think that the connection to the community is really important. Our clients are really connected to the community, and we have 3 or 4 different communities. We have a lot of different communities, but in Florida here, we are in the Orlando area, we're in Palm Coast, and we're in Jacksonville. And then, of course, we've got Ohio, Minnesota, and Washington. And I'll just speak for Florida now because for probably about 5 years, we have collected for Seniors First, and that is an organization in the Orlando area that gives to seniors who are maybe not as blessed as our clients are. And we collect gift cards for them. That's the thing that Seniors First asks us to collect. So we do that every holiday season. And then also in the Jacksonville, Palm Coast, St. Augustine area, we collect money for Northeast Florida Food Bank. And so our clients look forward to it. Even if we didn't send out anything telling them that we were going to do it, they would still bring gift cards and money because they're just trained that when our holiday party comes around, we have boxes with a little hole in it, and they just love to stick their money and their gift cards in it. And they wait to hear how much we collected. And it really is just a wonderful thing to do. And we invite the organizations to come to our parties as well and talk with our clients and mingle with them and talk a little bit about what they're doing. So,
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared that last piece too, because I think it's something for those to consider that these could go even beyond the charitable side of becoming like a COI type relationship as well. Like
yes.
you never know how that's going to evolve over time. So I think that's a good segue too into our next one is a question for each of you. Darrin, I'll start with you as I go round robin there. Can you share an example of how your company has highlighted their charitable activities through any of your marketing activities?
Yeah, it came around by accident, but last summer, my wife and I, we joined a team and did the Hood to Coast race. And this is one of the largest relay races, I think, in the world. And we did it because it supported cancer research. And we have friends who have a daughter about the same age as one of our daughters who was battling cancer and is still going through that fight. So it was very near and dear to our heart. But long story short, we ran this race and it was a 36-hour relay race. We took some pictures with our team at the end, at the finish line when we were all done. And I looked at my wife and said, hey, why don't you post this on LinkedIn just to bring awareness to the cause and show what we were up to. And I was really surprised at the number of comments, the number of impressions that we got from that social media post. And then we also shared it in our newsletter as well to our clients, and how many clients would come in for a review and just bring that up. And it was just neat to see how that naturally grew and spread. And I think, to everyone's point, it wasn't to draw attention to ourselves. It was really to draw attention to the cause.
Yeah, but it personified the brand of what you and your wife are passionate about there.
I think that really opened our eyes to the power of social media and posting about these things. But I would urge people to be cautious about making sure it doesn't look like you're trying to promote your brand. But social media is crazy and how things can just spread so quickly.
All right. Chelsea, how about you?
Yeah, I would say even just recently at JL Smith, they did a food bank day. That's something that we all do on the CTP side as well. We posted about that, and that's one of those things that, similar to what Darrin's saying, like when you share those messages of goodwill and reaching out into the community, people respond and people care. And I would say you might notice, as Darrin said, like those are some of the posts or things that will get a lot more engagement that you might think. So I would say that, and that's something that they do every year at JL Smith, even get like t-shirts made and all of that stuff. So it's fun that they get into it like that. And then we're also working with a couple agency clients to build out like giving back web pages. They haven't gone live yet, but just basically highlighting different causes that each of these advisors care about. Like I said, giving a place for them to donate is very important, but telling a story of how those advisors are connected to that cause.
Yeah, and I guess I'll even follow up on your story about the food bank. It was just last week that we've actually had clients that saw those posts of J.L. Smith that said, hey, we love that you did that. It's great that you're giving back. We'd love to be a part of that if you do it again. So we're actually looking at next year, even evolving that to turn it into something that we participate in, not just as a staff, but including the clients as well.
That's awesome.
Nikki, hopefully we didn't steal your thunder with the food bank one, but I'm sure you have plenty of other examples to share.
I do. So recently, our Ohio team did an arthritis walk, and arthritis is just, it affects a lot of our clients, and it affects some of the people that work for J.L. Smith. And I stole their idea, our Ohio people's idea, and I saw an Alzheimer's walk here in Jacksonville. And so I said, you know what? Let's do it. We invited all of our clients, and we had a handful show up, and it rained. Just want you to know it rained. And it was this last Saturday, so it's still fresh in my mind. But I think Lee Sasser, one of our advisors, said, you know what, Nikki, that was really good for my soul. And I thought about that, and I realized he's right. And there were like 1,900 people there, and they have different color flowers that go with if you have Alzheimer's or some cognitive disorder, you have a yellow flower. If you have purple, it just means you believe in the giving back to that organization that's trying to figure out what the future path is for people with Alzheimer's. So anyway, those are two ideas that we've done recently that really have meant a lot to our clients and to our employees.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and obviously thanks for sharing the pictures from all that down there.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to add too before moving on to the next question we have, and this kind of relates to what each of you said, but especially Darrin on the social media side. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be the outward facing stuff, because I would encourage everyone, there's like the low hanging fruit as well, thinking about your LinkedIn profile. I actually have a story I know I shared with Chelsea recently. The company I worked for before coming here to C2P, I was with a marketing agency, so I was out selling our services there. And in my LinkedIn profile, it had my community service work, and I'm very active with Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I had gone to meet with the owner of a small business whose daughter had been a wish child, and they had worked with Make-A-Wish Foundation, all that. We ended up going to lunch and spent 90% of the conversation just talking about our experience and what they went through and what I went through, and anyone that has anything like that, or really any kind of charity like that, not even Make-A-Wish, so much of it is just being there to listen, being that open ear. And we talked a very little bit about an actual marketing commitment before going back, but I knew on my drive back, like, we were going to end up working together. We had made that connection, that rapport, and it's because he had done his homework on me, just as I had of the prospect of looking into my background and making that personal connection before I even arrived there. So for any of you that are on any of these social media outlets, on LinkedIn especially, or Facebook, consider adding those in there, because it is that you don't even have to push it out of I'm doing these things. It's just where you have involvement already, where you or your family are participating in those. So Darrin, I'll bring it back to you now. If an advisor is already doing charitable work on their own, how can they merge their personal philanthropic activities and passions with their professional brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, again, it just needs to be natural. I can think of a couple. I have some friends in some other advisory firms here in Spokane, and I think a great example, one of them donates 10% of their assets under management fees to a childhood cancer foundation. And then there's a big gala event in the fall each year, and their brand is highlighted with that organization. And it's just a great way to get their brand out there. And then another advisory firm here in town they partner with a local outreach program to stop human trafficking. And I just think it's those kind of events where you can not only help the cause, raise awareness for the cause, but get your name out there. And it's about building trust and showing that we are human beings, that we do care about people. We care about our clients, but we also care about our community. And I think it just all works together.
And I love that. Nikki, you mentioned something in the opening too, because I think it can work both ways. It's what you or your family are passionate about that you bring to the professional brand. And Nikki, you mentioned the other way of, making sure you get involved with charities and organizations that relate to your audience, right?
Yes. And actually, I'll just tell a brief little story that I was talking with one of our clients, and her husband had recently been diagnosed with a cognitive disorder. And she was telling me how much their life had changed. And my grandfather had Alzheimer's. So I remember, but it was a long time ago. But just listening to her and seeing the fear and once they got a plan for everything and made some changes, their life started getting back on track. And she felt hope for the future for them. And it just really affected me. So when I saw that Alzheimer's walk come across, I said, this is it. This is definitely it. We need to do this. That's how it hit home.
So, Chelsea, I'm going to swing back to you. And I know we talked about the storytelling earlier with the story brand, but also just we've covered this on multiple coffee breaks and marketing roundtables. The importance of storytelling to communicate any kind of message and resonating with the audience. How can advisors effectively use storytelling to share the philanthropic journeys and the impact of their contributions?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, storytelling and marketing, they go hand in hand, and it's probably like one of the most important things that you can include in whether it be your web presence, your social media presence. But I would argue that it is particularly important in this situation when you're talking about your charitable efforts, because as everyone has mentioned, it's about building that connection. So I would say not being afraid to be personal, that's probably the most important thing you could do. And again, not being afraid to be vulnerable, because you never know what someone else has been through, someone who's visiting your website or coming across your social media presence. You don't know what they've been through. So if you are vulnerable about what has drawn you to these causes, that's really going to resonate with people. So I guess just an example, as Nikki said, with the arthritis walk with Janelle Smith, when we were writing the blog recap about it, we made sure to mention that that cause was important to Brian. Brian struggles with arthritis. He has been involved with that cause for many years. So while, yes, he is a chairperson with the Arthritis Foundation, it touches him personally. And so making sure that you tell your story of like how you got involved and why. And as Darrin mentioned, the reason that he got involved with his relay was because cancer has touched many people in his life. So I think making sure that you're being personal and vulnerable, that's really key. And then again, just making sure that you are drawing attention to the organization, all the good things that they're doing. I would say those are the biggest things that I can suggest.
Dang. And do you mind talking about and sharing just a little more detail on exactly what we've done, like at C2P and JL Smith, just for ideation for the group here? It wasn't just posting a picture to social, and that's fine. And it's something, it's heading in the right direction. But in terms of like blogs, press releases, things like that for ideas.
Yeah, so generally when it's something like a charitable outreach that we do, we have been liking to do blog recaps when it comes to working with JL Smith, because they're one of our agency clients. So we actually have one dropping today for the Alzheimer's walk that happened over the weekend. And then we did the one for the arthritis walk. And basically what we include there is, and this is actually a helpful tip for anyone who, if you're engaging and stuff, this is a great starting point. I created a list of questions that I prepare ahead of the event, and I submit it to Nikki or whoever is going to be attending. And it's how many people are attending, what was the impact, things like that. Get some quotes from those who were there. And then from that, we write a blog. And it's really nice because you're quoting people who were there, you're describing how much money was raised, but also you're telling people like what was it like to be there. And I think that's what it goes back to, the storytelling, getting them in that position of like how it felt. Back to what Nikki said, like how Lee said, this was good for my soul. Like that's just an amazing, I don't want to say it's an amazing soundbite, because yes, it is from a marketing standpoint, but it's also just shows like the personal impact of these things. Like it's not just that you're doing good in the community. this is great for your team as well. Yeah, I would say the blogs are really important. And then you can keep sharing those. And in the blog, you'll have images and whatever. So exactly, you can share those on social media and then just do a general social media post like, hey, we had an amazing time participating in this. Check out our blog. That's our recap blog coming out later this week. It's just gives it a nice platform and you give that event sort of the attention that it deserves. Because there's a lot too that goes into planning those and being a part of it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the specifics of that. And really, like you said, getting it with all of it, from the social media post to the blog to the press release or whatever it is, getting to the how it makes you feel to be a part of it and not just the fact that you did it, because that's the part that probably seems self-serving, is just I did this. But when people understand the feeling of being a part of it, that's when they get the real essence of it there. So Nikki, for you, how can advisors go about planning their philanthropic activities in advance to stay on the pulse of what current activities are important?
So I think there's a couple different ways you can do that. I think we have our holiday parties coming up, and I always connect what we're raising, money / gift cards / whatever that is. I always have a part on the invitation that I list that information. I tell a little bit about the organization that we're raising it for, and then I just mentioned that we'll be collecting in boxes for those at the events. And like I told you earlier, our clients, I don't even think now I have them trained, because I wouldn't even have to put that on the invitation and they would just show up with everything. But that's a good way for them to plan for what we do. And also our newsletter is a great place to not only highlight what we do and tell them about how it went and what it was like and how many people attended, but that is also a place that you can highlight what you're doing in the future. And maybe people will plan to come out and walk or plan to come out and give or whatever. I think that's a good way to plan in advance.
Yeah, and I like that too. It's obviously for any of you listening and watching, engaging them in the events that you're already doing. Like you said, Nikki, make them a part of it. And it can be an optional donation that's part of it. And actually a good example for any of you that were at the Collegium we had a couple years ago here in Cleveland, and we had the Superheroes for Kids charity there, and a lot of you dressed up, and it was a great time. And we commingle those events and we're able to work the charity into that, building those into the events you're already doing, or co-hosting one if that works out as well, depending on the level of engagement, like as Darrin shared earlier. And I think the other thing that tip for any of you that are trying to stay ahead and get on this is having your own calendar that you work it into. I know everyone has the best of intentions, but then life happens and you get busy. But whether if you have a content calendar or an activities calendar or just a firm calendar you're doing, but planning those out in advance. So just putting the date out there and then assigning someone at the firm, or whether it's outsourced or whatever, that is responsible for working through that, making it happen. And once you put it on there, the accountability is there to see it through. So Darrin, if you don't mind sharing, how did you go about choosing the charitable endeavors or community outreach activities that you've done?
I blame my wife for that one, like the Hood to Coast relay.
You credit your wife?
I credit my wife. So I am not a runner. I would not run from here to there if I had to, but it was such a good cause that I said, why not? And that was one example, but we're highly involved with our church too. And we just look for opportunities to serve there as well. And as well as just our local schools. Our 4 kids are in grade school. And so how can we serve our school community and partner with them? And hey, if our name gets out there, our brand gets out there, then that's a win too. But
right.
Yeah, I think it just naturally has to be something you're passionate about. That way you're committed to seeing it through. And just listening to today's meeting, I think, gosh, there were so many clients that found out about that Hood to Coast relay race after we had done it, that they were like, hey, we would have donated if we known you were going to do that. So I think like if we do that again next year, we're definitely going to get the word out in advance so that we can have more donations come in and just spread the word throughout our client community.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you said it, because even thinking of our J.L. Smith example, that all those that said I would have loved to be involved, and maybe we'll involve them next year. But yeah, if we had said a month earlier we're going to do this, we might have gotten some that came with us this year. Yeah. So even putting it out there on social before it happens, or a newsletter like Nikki said. I guess, Chelsea, I know we're running up on it, but I think another good one is we're just trying to, a lot of us are metrics driven with the business, but there can be this side of it too. What metrics or indicators do you think advisors could be using to measure the impact of these efforts?
Yeah, I think even just bringing up what Darrin said about social media, like the amount of impressions, you can see all that after you post something. The amount of impressions your posts have gotten, obviously, if you're active in your marketing and you're actually keeping track of that. So likes, shares, comments, that's always important. But also you can track page views. So if you do post a recap blog, Google Analytics is your best friend. So you can see who is actually or how many people those posts are touching. And then also if you put a CTA, I always do recommend putting a CTA at the end of a blog. It's always good to do that. We do blogs where we write about what occurred, and then we'll always have an ending paragraph that's, hey, we're always passionate about working in the community. If you want to work with an organization like us, book a call. So you can put trackers on those CTA buttons as well. So I would say those are the top ones. But again, word of mouth, like that's not really a metric, but you can count how many people have those conversations with you afterwards.
Right. And on the charity side, again, depending on what your initiative, sometimes it's just engagement with that charity. But if there are donations involved, a lot of times if you work it out in advance, you can track donations to there to be able to then share, again, in those outward communications, hey, we helped generate this much in donations, or this many books, or this many miles on Darrin's case. So
Yeah.
those kind of things on the charity side can be tracked as well. And then you tie those together hand in hand.
Exactly.
That half hour went by quickly. Darrin, Chelsea, Nikki, thank you very much for your contributions and thought leadership today, sharing with the group. Thank you all for being here today. Please make sure you join us next week. We have leveragingwealth.com, estate planning reimagined, with our own Kayla Mackey on there. And in the meantime, have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Never miss an episode by subscribing now to discover new resources and strategies. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help scale and secure your business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.